Hi everybody, today we're going to talk about what to expect when you buy a vintage RV. And this is my second vintage RV, so I've got some experience and I'm going to share with you what I've been working on. This is my 1984 Chevrolet Champion flagship Class C RV. She's one of the most famous RVs on the internet. She was featured on 4 major channels when she belonged to Tiki. First, she was shown on To Meander, my former channel with Robert, and then I believe also Robin on Creativity RV, Enigmatic Nomadics with Jamie, and finally with Bob on Cheap RV Living. I've named her Freebird, and my friends Gina and Jeff sold her to me on Cinco de Mayo of this year, so I'm just getting good and started with her. Before this, I owned another vintage RV, a Class B fat body Ford, and it was 1983, and I lovingly named her Fiona. I was in the process of restoring her from the outside in and had replaced all of the major components except for the engine. I'd already changed out the rooftop AC, the hot water heater, the heat pump. I had even put in new plumbing and had, there was so much stuff. The fuse box and the electrical wiring, the refrigerator was new, the stove and oven was new, and then, as happens, life didn't go according to plan, and a pesky little brain injury sidetracked me on that. Fast forward 7 years, and I've been given the glorious opportunity to own another vintage RV and restore her. And a lot of work, as you will see, has already been done on Freebird, but there's still a lot to do. So what can you expect when you buy a vintage RV? Let's get into that. Well, the engine for one thing. I've already done a lot of work with my mobile mechanic Ed on this rig, and there's some more to do, but if you want to check out that video, click here. In addition to all the work that he's already done, this week I'm going to be meeting with him, and he is going to replace the dashboard AC, which doesn't work at all, and he's going to be doing a universal joint this week and continuing his diagnosis for what may be a ball joint or remote ball bushing. I think that's right. He'll figure it out and we'll get her all fixed up. And again, this is a vehicle that has been owned by people that loved her and kept her up, but she's been in and out of storage for a while too. A lot of people think that they will just spend less money and buy an older rig, especially if you're jonesing for more room or to be able to stand up or take a shower or any of the luxuries like that. But as you will see, spending less money up front doesn't necessarily mean less cost. Because of my thermal regulation issues with my brain injury, it is imperative that I get that dashboard AC fixed, and we'll talk about the house AC in a minute. But the other components that Ed continues to work on, my mobile mechanic, those could leave me stranded on the side of the road, so those also have to be addressed. If you're buying a vintage RV or a motorhome and plan on just parking it and living in it, that's one thing. But if you're planning on traveling in it like I'm going to do, then you have to make sure it is in tip-top shape. When I was restoring my original vintage RV, Fiona, I was just getting to the fun stuff when I had to give her up. She had the original brown and orange velour decor on the furniture and everything, and green velour on the walls and the ceiling. That's cosmetic stuff, but if you're planning on changing it out, you should be aware that that stuff adds up very fast. On this rig, for example, Tiki had already changed out some major things like the refrigerator, the water pump, Nature's Head toilet, and some other things, but there's always upgrades that have to be done. And both on Fiona, my original vintage RV, and on this vintage RV, Freebird, Tiki and I had both taken out the furnaces because those are just so unreliable when you're talking about a vintage RV. And so you've got to be able to have the expense. I use an Olympian Wave 3 catalytic heater, and I think Tiki did too. So you have to be able to maybe get a new system like that. I'm also very fortunate in that this RV has a fabulous build out that I get to start with as my foundation, but stay tuned to the end of this video for a surprise. So there are upgrades that you may have to do for repair or just because something needs to be upgraded or that you are doing for a safety concern. But then there are surprises. For example, it is summer and my air conditioner is going out, but it's the original air conditioner, so there's no surprise in that. But really, not really, but you got to be prepared. My new unit should arrive next week and my HVAC guy will be coming out after that to install it. And I'll be doing a video on that as well as some of the exterior repairs that I'm having done. I guess in the words of Rosanna Dana, it's always something. And you guys, really, that's no different than, for example, if you live in a sticks and bricks. I know when I bought my sticks and bricks that I felt like the bleeding was never going to stop. There was the purchasing it, the closing cost, moving expenses, and then when I got in, there was a whole bunch of stuff I had to buy to set up house. And right after I moved in the first year, I remember the garbage disposal went out, the hot water heater went out, there were plumbing issues, and then we had a hailstorm and I ended up having to do a new roof, and it was crazy the first year. And it's no different sometimes, and especially when you're buying a vintage RV. You just got to know that there are going to be expenses after you make the purchase. I fully expect that once I start traveling again, that other issues will come up with Freebird, not because there's anything wrong, but because when you are taking a motorhome down the road, it's like an earthquake inside here. And so things are going to break, things are going to jostle loose, and there's going to be constant repair. That's just the way of it. And I'm hoping and I'm thinking that I'm doing all of the base work so that she's going to hold up really well. Another video that I'll be doing in the future is Tiki already had 200 watts of solar on the roof, and I'm going to be adding more, at least 1 or 2 panels. With my current controller, I can't go over 400 watts, so if I wanted to go over that, I would have to change out the controller and everything too. And so that might not seem like a necessity, but I'm a digital nomad, and boondocking restores my soul, and I don't want to always be having to plug into shore power. And so for me to be able to boondock and to continue to work and to bring you videos and to write my books, I really need to have electricity and be able to have solar power. So 200 watts is not quite enough, and I'll be upgrading that, and that'll be another video. And I'm sharing that because you need to know that you're going to have upgrades, like I said, both surprises and repairs and things that happen. And you're probably going to have to make upgrades just to meet your lifestyle. Speaking of lifestyle, every time you move, there are expenses. It doesn't matter whether you are moving into a sticks and bricks, a vintage RV, an apartment, a motorhome of that maybe a Class B or a bumper pull trailer or a fifth wheel trailer. It doesn't matter. You're going to have expenses because you have to have things that you need to replace or things that you want to decorate with, like a flower arrangement or a dish drain or maybe some hand towels or things that you just weren't expecting. I know that I've had all kinds of little expenses like that. So today I'm sharing with you what to expect when you buy a vintage RV, but I'm wondering, would you also like to know what to watch out for before you purchase a vintage RV? Because I've got some tips on that. And also, I am 7 years full-time nomad, and so that's 7 years of being in a tiny home. And so if you're interested in knowing what's in my cabinets or how I organize, let me know that in the comments below, and maybe I'll do those 2 future videos as well. So stay tuned for the surprise that I told you about, and I'll share with you. But I hope that this review of what to expect when you buy a vintage RV has been helpful. You're probably going to have engine work, upgrades, interior and exterior repairs, as well as personalization items and getting set up. Okay, so are you ready for the surprise? Okay, well, let me show you what's behind the curtain. I feel like Vanna White or something. Okay, behind the curtain over the cab are these boxes that I've been using to organize things in, and they're not necessarily how they're labeled, so don't pay attention to that. But I was going to organize things, and I bought fabric, and was going to cover the boxes so that it looked nice and neat up there. And we put this board on here because clearly this is the bed that unfolds. And then later, when I could afford it, I was going to have a cabinet built up there. In the meantime, I have decided to start sleeping up there instead. So now I have another expense because I'm going to be buying a mattress for up there, and I need to get a bunk ladder. So again, once you move into somewhere, you don't know what's going to work for you and what's not, and you're going to have unexpected repairs come up for that. So what's happening with my bed that's been in the back? Well, this bed is going to come out, and this is going to be a desk and storage area, kind of like an office or a studio. Not quite sure yet. And these are two huge windows, and one is boarded up because it serves as the headboard right now. But I'm going to take that down, and so that I have my windows accessible. And also right now my bathroom is open up to the rest of the RV, which if I have company over or something, that's going to make it pretty uncomfortable. So I'm thinking about extending this wall so that I have a door right here. This wall and this wall. I don't know until I get the bed out, because underneath here is the water tank and the hot water heater and everything. So stay tuned, everybody. I've got some great videos coming up for you. Let me know what you would do if you bought a vintage RV and what your thoughts are. Are you ready for that? I can highly recommend it. It's a lot of work, but oh my goodness, it's so much fun. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you down the road.